Hello. So today we are talking to Hannes Ruegheimer and Christian Spanik.
Hi,
Hi.
Hello. So,
thanks for having us.
Hannes, I have heard you are the reason why Chris got into computers. Is that true?
Yeah, that's kind of true. It all started when we were visiting school together. We were classmates, as you may know, and I was driving by bus every day, so there were some times that I had to fill with just waiting and doing stuff that was interesting for me. And this actually happened in Kaufhof in Würzburg, where we both grew up, where they had a Texas Instruments 94 TI 994. This was my first computer actually. So this 1 hour until my bus would drive home, I would regularly spend in this department store in the office department of Kaufhof and just play around with this lonesome computer in which nobody else was seemed to be interested actually. And so I started to play around and invest my pocket money into the programmer's guide in order to learn some basic and to make this machine do anything actually, which kind of got out of hand a little. So this 1 hour tended to become 2 or 3 hours, and I started to program little games on that. And I think this was the phase when Christian came in and
Right.
said, "Okay, what are you doing exactly in those afternoons when you're deep diving into
The
Kaufhof?"
funny thing is, Hannes didn't have the computer. He just had the book to program the computer and go
Sure,
to
I
Kaufhof
couldn't
to
afford
program
a
it there.
TI 904 at that time. And actually, in the first couple of weeks or months, I think actually, I didn't even have a tape recorder or the possibility to save my games. So I would have a little booklet with all those basic codes and would need something like 1.5 hours to type in the programs just in order to be able to run them or fine tune them for another half an hour or so, and then I would have to leave. And the guy who ran this office department, the salesperson there, one day came to me and said, "Okay, I've witnessed this for some time now, and here, as a gift, you have the adapter cable in order to hook up a cassette recorder and save and load your programs, because I can't see you typing all those codes in for hours any longer." And he was actually quite happy, I think, because something happened
Yeah,
on
right.
this machine, and people stood dropped by and looked over my shoulder and began asking questions. So this was kind of.
Interestingly, I have such a cassette adapter.
You still have that,
Let
okay?
me get it.
While you're searching the adapter, which is a funny thing. If
Well, I know where it is. Just 1 second.
That's okay.
So, this here
Okay.
okay,
is the test such a
Mm-hmm.
adapter.
yeah. But you know, the beginning was not the C64. The beginning
a
was the
TI, yeah.
TI 994, which was a relatively expensive computer, I think.
They were all expensive from our point of view at that time,
Yeah.
but still, it was more expensive than later the Commodores. And actually, yeah, when my parents got the idea that I'm into computers, sooner or later they helped me afford a VIC-20. This was the first one I actually owned and used at home. And the times were still that nice at those years that I was later able to turn in my VIC-20 and pay the extra for a C64. So basically exchange it with the premium. And this was my way how I ended up with the Commodore 64.
The real bad story for me was that anytime when Hannes came back to school during the first half of the day, he was always talking about that thing, about what he did, what he's planning to do, what I don't know he will do in 20 years ago with that machine. I don't know. He was all the time. He was only talking about that computer, and after a while, I was trying to find out what the hell is it for. And because what he did was little games, things like that, but it was really, I think, very basic things, right? So
Sure,
you
and
didn't have the idea, that's
it couldn't compete with those Ataris and whatever else was on the market at that time.
Right.
So
Especially-
Christian wasn't really impressed about
No,
it.
I really wonder what he's doing. And he said, just come with me and we go together there and then I show you. And he showed me things. And I mean, nowadays I know it was really impressive what he did, but that time everything I see was some cursors going up and down and left to right and that's it.
Some basic spaceships like Space Invaders style.
And he was so happy about that. I said, hey, what's the problem with this guy? So that was, I think, for the rest of our life, something like our work.
That got us on track in both directions. So I continued working on my programming skills, and Christian had a look at that and was more thinking about how could we sell that, where's the marketing aspect of that.
And actually, back then, you even wrote your own books, like Peek and Poke from the Vogel Publishing.
You're right.
Right. That was one of the outcomes later on. Yeah, he was visiting me at home, and I had this Peek and Poke poster on my wall where I just noted down the most important Peek and Poke addresses in order to quickly find them. And he had a look at that and okay, if you need that, maybe other people need that as well.
Mm-hmm.
And this started. This led to us writing an article for Run, for a computer magazine at that time. And a little later on, Vogel Verlag approached us and made us do that chip special, Peek and Poke. Yeah.
Which was one of the most successful chip specials they ever had, and we ever had.
True. It was our first anyway, but...
But this is actually the third revised edition.
Right.
Because the first edition had a blue cover, according to the C64 wiki entry at least.
Right.
Yeah.
They changed the cover, and we changed some contents. Yeah.
We had to. I mean, the funny thing was we had to... I don't know if I told you that already, but we had to, when we did the print out of the thing, this was in a small little, let's say, hotel, and we had only a Nadeldrucker, a needle.
Pin writer.
And so all the time when the thing prints something down, it went beep, beep, beep. And the problem was we had 150 pages of Barit papier, which is a special kind of
paper for optical representation. Yeah.
And we printed through the whole night in that hotel. We printed out the book. You can imagine we didn't have much friends left on the other rooms in that hotel.
Actually, I think the fact that we were still living and still sitting here was that they weren't aware that we were the guys who ruined their nights.
I think most of them did not know what the sound was because it was not so normal that time. It was I think a NEC P6, right?
No, this was later. I think it was an Epson FX80 or something.
Very
basic, very, very simple 8-dot
funny times.
printer.
Later on, you wrote books about the Amiga, and first book Christian did alone because you didn't really want to be involved in writing a book for the Amiga, Hannes. Is that true?
That was okay. The first book we made together was the book about the C64. It was a beginner's guide for the C64. Peek Poke that you just showed was the second one, and then our ways parted a little. I had to go to the army, to Bundeswehr, and Christian started working in an ad agency at that time.
Right.
And you were based in Frankfurt at that time.
Right.
I was still living in Würzburg. And being based in Frankfurt and having contacts to the Commodore press department, he was invited to join the Amiga presentation in Frankfurt in 84 or 85 or something.
I don't know exactly. But the funny thing was then I moved to Düsseldorf to another ad agency, and we were in contact with Dr. Achim Becker from Data Becker, who always asked us to write books for him, and we didn't want to. And Hannes was still on the C64. Because there was quite a lot to discover on the C64, and I thought the Amiga, and so I started talking to Hannes about writing a book on the Amiga at Data Becker, and Hannes didn't really want to make an Amiga book.
Being a computer freak and writing all the magazines that appeared at that time, I was more I actually thought the Atari ST would be the more interesting machine. Interestingly, we had a chat with the editor-in-chief, with Rainer Bartel, who did the the data vault at that time, and he also said, okay, we really didn't have the Amiga in our on our screens. Actually, we were much more into Atari, because this was the serious machine. This was little more resemblant to the Mac, which everybody craved, but nobody could afford. And so the Amiga was not really their main focus, and Christian changed that.
Even not on Dr. Achim Becker, because he was really well connected to the Tramiel, to the family Tramiel, Czech Tramiel, and his sons, and they were Atari, and so Dr. Becker was just looking for Atari. And when I started saying I want to write a book about Amiga, he asked me, I think you want to earn money. And I said, no, I earn money being a copywriter and an ad agency, but I'm going to make something on the Amiga because I like that machine. And so I was in the first book. I was really alone, and I put in the forward. I put it's for Hannes, so that it was the first book I did on the Amiga, right? Yeah.
I mean, Amiga was basically Christian's dreams come true, because already in our C64 times, he was always pushing the boundaries. He made us do a little demo, you would say. Actually, it was for the German book fair, for the Buchmesse, and we did. I did a lot of. Actually, we both did a lot of concept work and programming in order to do a tremendous intro that would something like a 20th Century Fox or so.
And C64, the movie, we called it.
So the C64 movie never stepped out of the basic introduction about the 20th Century Fox presenting part, but this was what Christian really saw in computers. He said, okay, this is a creative tool. I want to use that. I want to make movies. I want to make content with that. And the Amiga was obviously a huge step ahead in that direction.
Right.
So the next thing you did was actually doing user courses on the television. I know, for example, you and Johannes, you did a user course about modems.
I mean, this was a big step for us, because we did all these Amiga books, but the Amiga market came to an end. I mean, it was like it was, and we still sold Amiga books when the Amiga still was not out on the market. So it was a really interesting part of our life. But we decided to think about PCs, because we get such a lot of good reviews on our books about the way how they are written and the way you can understand it, and they are very understandable, they are very funny, you have fun on learning computers. And so a lot of people said, hey, you should do things like that on a PC, on an MS-DOS market. And so we said, okay, think about that, and started making a row of books, which was called Einsteigen ohne auszusteigen at Markt und Technik. And then while I was doing Neues, the computer show, I thought about what would happen if we try to make a kind of course, like teaching TV on how to work with Word and how to work with modems and all that stuff. And
in the style that we made those books,
and
which
I thought,
not taken too seriously and not
right,
going by the scientific approach, but more
it should be fun,
comedic one.
And
actually,
so I remember the nights I had with Hannes in the hotel room printing out books or writing on books together, and drinking and eating and writing and drinking and eating and writing days and days in Frankfurt. And so I said, hey, what if we put the whole idea, two guys together, one who really knows well about it and the other one who not know so much about that.
But who's a great salesperson,
right? And so I said, put it together and put it in Anwenderkurs, and so that was how the whole story started. Yeah.
And the TV station, the ZDF, actually hooked onto that idea and made it happen, actually, because we couldn't be sure that they really would buy that, but they gave us a chance to do it. And
but the funny thing was, I think they really found out about the whole story after the first show run, after the first season, because the first we did, I think, about 12,
something like that.
12
in the first season.
And then money was out, so we stopped doing it. And there was such a huge amount of mailings. I mean, not mails, I really mean letters from people who said, why you stop? This is such a great thing. And typical for ZDF, those old people's TV station, that you put out this great new format. And we said, hey guys, they didn't stop us. We stopped. But the funny thing was, there was so much reaction from the audience that I got a call from the head of programming at ZDF at that time, Oswald Ring. And the first time I thought it was a joke from my editorial staff that here's the office of Oswald Ring. I want to talk to Christian Spanik. He said, hey, good joke. But the funny thing was that I call you back. And the funny thing, I called the number back. It was really the office of Oswald Ring. And so he asked me, what are you doing there? We had such a lot of letters and postcards from people. So what are you doing? And so they decided to give us a second and a third and a fourth season. And so we went on with that.
Well, actually, I think the second season we still did together. In the third season,
yeah, I think
Michi
that was Michi Kloss came.
In.
Yeah, right.
Because
so
I was starting as a freelancer, working for a Stuttgart publishing house at that time, and so I had to make up my mind a little where to put my time and my work. And
it was a lot of work. I mean,
it was really a lot of work.
Writing the scripts, doing the whole thing on stage, and we didn't have too much time in production time. We had to do at least every day at about 10 minutes of the whole show, which doesn't sound a lot, but it is a lot. So they had 3 days for one show, sometimes only 2 days for one show. So we had really to have a script, but we had on the other hand to improve. Improvise a lot of stuff.
Sure, yeah.
It was not so easy. I mean, it was not so easy for Hannes.
It was fun anyway, yeah. And the good thing, I think, and this made it all work, was that we just had to play ourselves. It wasn't really too difficult to get into the role.
I mean, somehow, not complete.
Maybe for Christian it was a little more complicated, yeah. But
yeah, because
he did it well.
Yeah, I had always, because our director loved all those sort of faces I made, and so he forced me to. Yeah, now Christian, react. What? Yeah, Hannes saying something, react. And so I started with, or things like that. And this really was a relatively hard part, because I always tried to make Hannes laughing about it. And so it was not so easy for the show
to keep serious. Yeah. But I think in most cases we succeeded.
Right. Yeah. So you were more the fun side of the user courses compared to, VDR Computer Club, for example. One show with Michael Kloss about Windows 95. You did funny stories like trying to cook something and not having any idea and blowing up the meal.
I mean, yeah, we did a lot of bad things to that studio. That's true. I mean, but we always had the idea of there must be one overall story about those. Every part has four shows, I think. It was 12. So DFU and BTX had 4 shows. Word had 4 shows. Excel had 4 shows. And so we had a story around it, and then trying to put in all the things we thought which are important. So Hannes started talking about and thinking about what should be in the show, what is important for using Excel. And then we started together implementing that in a story we just imagined.
And maybe some sourcing in the script was going back to Laura and Hardy.
Right.
Concept like that, because that was our idea of how fun on TV should look like.
Yeah. I think nowadays we would go viral. I mean, on YouTube it would be.
Probably.
Travel.
So compared to the VDR Computer Club, you were more the funny guys, like those were more the serious ones regarding computer courses. Some
people say so. Yeah, I mean, it was a totally different concept actually, and we just talked about this the other day. We really didn't take too much effort in looking what they do, and just made our own thing, and it came quite naturally, I think.
Yeah.
It wasn't so much concept work. We have to defer, and we have to be far away from what they are doing. We just did our thing, and it kind of worked out.
Yeah. So Computer Club always had a different story. I mean, in that days when we started with Anwenderkurs, they only had their classical Computer Club. And later on, they also, like we did on Dreisat with Neues Anwenderkurs, Computer Show, Neues Magazin, and all that stuff, Computer for Kids. They later on they divided also in 4 different shows. I think it was Computer Club Classic and 3 other formats like we did. But we never thought about them to be a kind of competitor or something like that. Was no reason for it.
Exactly. We obviously had a look at what they were doing and just out of interest, but what was not that we compared what we are doing to their concepts.
So you wrote books in computer courses. What did you do afterwards since?
Well, as I said before, I had to make up my mind if I put my work and my time into the TV opportunity, of course, or if I stay with print journalism, which was my day job and my main source of income as well. And as those tasks were demanding as well, yeah, I had to just go for either for one of those ways. And yeah, my decision at that time was to keep with the print journalism. Yeah.
And Hannes, to be honestly, Jörg, Hannes always was the one who really knows about the stuff. So he, I mean, TV always means be on some level, but not too deep. And Hannes knew much more than that what he showed on the show. So I think print journalism was the better choice for Hannes because he could go deeper in things like we did it on TV. I think this was
maybe. I really can't recall what were the real reasons why. It was more like a decision by heart. I just said, okay, I have to go one of those ways, and made up my mind to stick with writing and magazine journalism. Yeah.
So you are like a duo, like for the Computer Chronicles, where you had Stuart Chaffee and Gary Kendall, where like Gary was more the uber geek and Chaffee was more like the nerd.
Yeah, I mean, I think this principle is pretty common, especially in the IT section. I mean, these are really great names, or big names, but I think in the situation, it was also a little like Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. I was the guy who did the detailed work, who was into programming, but who would never been able to sell this to a larger audience. And Christian's part was to have that fresh view on what we were doing and finding out whom we could sell that, where we could write, where we could publish our books, and where we would have the channels to just get the word out. I mean, I'm a technical writer, so obviously I'm also doing online and also scripting videos and things like that. But yeah, I think the core business, my core business, is still being a writer. Yeah.
But on the other hand, if you look at the things we do at Digisaurier, we do at Intelligente Welt, Hannes is very often still my counterpart in like when he's here in the studio or when he is connected to me from Barcelona or whatever to talk about technical stuff, because he's still the guy who knows. I'm only the guy who can put the questions.
But he learned a lot in the last 30 years, 40 years.
So I guess you are like the other guys that actually wouldn't stop in that business like from today to tomorrow, you know, like going into retirement and saying, okay, guys, that's it. I'm not doing this anymore.
I think this okay, Christian may answer for himself, but I think a heartbreak would not be my way. When I'm thinking about getting older, okay, I think about maybe reducing work a little, but stopping it completely is not really an attractive option to me.
I don't think so either, because you know, if you did all, I mean, we had quite a lot of luck in our life because we were able to do something which we had a lot of fun with and making our living with it.
And so, it turned out to be an important thing. I mean, when we started with computers, it was a totally freaky niche subject, and nowadays it's in the midst of business, of economy, of society. Yeah. So this we really, that is one thing we didn't know and we didn't anticipate. It just happened to us, and of course it helped us grow in what we are doing.
Though I think I don't have an idea of stopping it. I mean, after a while, if you're getting older, you find out that you don't have, for example, not so much power anymore like you had years ago, things like that, and you step down a little bit. But I'm still on air with different formats now on other channels like before, but it's still fun. I mean,
and we're still crazy. I mean, today I had to leave bed at 4:30 in order to be here in the necessary time frame. So,
and it was snowy outside.
So we're not really at that point that we don't have the powers to do what we want anymore. not yet.
So you are working together and you're depending on each other and you will continue to work together as a dream team, you know.
Yeah, I mean, neither of us could have done it by himself. Christian wouldn't have had that detailed knowledge to do those. I mean, he wrote his own book about the Amiga and about using the Amiga on a user level, but he when it came to Amiga Basic and system architecture and stuff like that, that was not his thing. Right. And on the other hand, if I wouldn't have met Christian, I would have ended up writing my programs just for myself and not make a living out of it.
Technical engineer, something like that, perhaps. I don't know.
Probably, yeah.
But you have to know, I mean, when, for example, it was a typical thing, Hannes, because you said we had to invent everything. Hannes did a program which was called CharDev, which was a program to define characters
for the
sets
on the C64,
and he did it for himself, and I think he did it years ago, and then I started to sell that to a publisher and say, hey, people want to have their own character sets on a C64, and we have a program to do that. So this was a different time, but I think if you look at again, big names. If you look at Mark Zuckerberg or at Larry Brin or something like that, were all the people who did something first because there was nothing. And then they filled up that space. And I think any kind of innovation, if it's on the media or if it's on technical sites or on programming, coming out of there is something missing and somebody sees it and had to have an idea of changing it. And I think this missing thing is the important point. The only problem is we never know what's coming out in the end.
Totally, yeah. I love it. I mean, I'm obviously target group myself, so I'm thinking about buying this new C64, this micro version with the 50 plus games hard coded into it, just as a reminder, as a feel good thing. I mean, there is no productivity aspect to that, so I can totally understand that. Maybe it also has to do with the age that we all have reached now. Because I think when you're under 40 or over 50, you're a little more nostalgic than you're in your 20s and 30s. And this is probably a reason why everybody, and it were good times. I mean, the late 80s and early 90s were just a great time for us. So we had a lot of fun and it was a great adventure. And it's nice to think back about that. Of course it's crazy. Of course. I mean, to some extent, I can understand where that idea comes from, because you're so much used to those tools like being online and then being able to send a file or a program just over the air, that it comes as a burden if you're just not able to use that. I mean, if you're hooking up a original C64, the first thing you have to do is to find out how to get stuff in there. Is my disk drive still around? Right. Is it still working? Is there any other option? Are there modules that I can buy on eBay or whatever? So of course I can understand that. I mean, on the other hand, from my point of view, it probably does not make too much sense to put a C64 on the internet. There wouldn't be a browser actually. On the Amiga, I know there have been developments that put that into action that wasn't around in the original times, but there are still people around who are doing that now.
So let's ask, before our time runs out, though, what's your plan for the future? What do you want to do next?
Oh, that's a big question. Okay. I'm not quite sure if there's a big plan for the future. I mean, what we've been doing for 30 years now is reacting to what happens in the market and what's the demand out there and putting our very personal flavor onto that. And I think that has worked out quite well. So I think maybe we're lucky and it still works for a couple of years. Yeah, that's basically the way to go, I think.
I think it's still the same kind of duo. The only difference is now I'm more detailed in things like how does social media work, how does algorithms work, and what have we to do to come to the people with the show we did. It's a kind of marketing, but for perhaps some computers who are doing algorithms to bring us on Facebook on front or on YouTube on front or bring us in back. And together we, just today we were having a workshop about what do we do on Digisaurier, what do we do on Intelligente Welt, just to find out what is a way for us to handle with all those different things. But the funny thing is, we still have fun with all that. So this has not changed at all.
And the roles haven't changed either, I would say. I mean, hear him talk, he's still about how can we sell, how does it work on the market, and I'm relying on him and happy that there is somebody who takes care of that, and I can concentrate on the content side. And this is.
And then that part I'm relying on him. I mean, just imagine when we do it this evening, we do a show at the Huffington Post about security, which is a really hard stuff theme. But I'm quite sure with somebody like Hannes, who knows so much, who saw so many things, technical, and who is so deep in that awful things, we get a good show which people understand, and where we put the right questions with the right answers. So I think it's still this kind of rely on each other. It's a kind of, I don't know how you call it, Bergkameradschaft, Gipfelgemeinschaft. I don't know. It's German words. I don't know the English ones.
Two guys who just enjoy working together.
Right. Mm-hmm. So the biggest plan is, I think, having still fun for the next few years.
Yeah, that's a good goal to go for it.
So thanks for talking to me, Chris and Hannes. Goodbye.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you
for having us.
Bye.